All right, we resume our discussion on the book, The Foundations of Buddhism, written by Rupert Gethin, and then we come to chapter 9, and the title is Mahayana, and then so we come to the page 234, emptiness, sunyata, and the perfection of wisdom, Prajnaparamita. Okay. All right, yeah, someone, you do want to start to read now?
Okay. Mahayana Sutras see the motivation underlying the Arhat's attainment as lacking the great compassion, Mahakaruna, of a Buddha. Of equal concern to the sutras is perfect wisdom. Together, wisdom and compassion become the two great themes of Mahayana thought. Should I continue?
Yeah.
The perfection of wisdom, Prajnaparamita literature, evolved over many centuries and comprises a variety of texts, including some of the oldest Mahayana Sutra material. Edward Combs, the pioneer of the scholarly study of this literature, considered the oldest and most basic text to be the Asta Sahasrika Prajnaparamita, perfection of wisdom in 8,000 lines, which he dates from the 1st BCE. Subsequent centuries saw the production of vast expanded versions, such as those of 100,000 lines, 25,000 lines, and 18,000 lines, as well as shorter versions such as the Vajracchedika and the Hridaya, the Diamond and Heart Sutra, although it now appears that the last, a text only a few lines in length, was originally composed in Chinese and only subsequently rendered into Sanskrit.
Okay. Why don't we just continue first, reading, yeah.
Okay.
Let next one.
Okay. In a century or so prior to the appearance of the perfection of wisdom literature, Buddhism had, in the form of Abhidhamma, begun to evolve increasingly.
Evolve?
Evolve.
No, not evolve.
Evolve.
Mm.
To evolve increasingly detailed and sophisticated theoretical accounts of the nature of reality and of the stage of the path of awakening.
No, of.
To awakening. Central to the Abhidhamma is the...
No, Abhidhamma, Abhidharma.
Abhidharma is the distinction between the conventional truths that persons and selves exist and the ultimate truth that persons and selves are ultimately simply aggregates of evanescence dharmas, physical and mental events. The main teaching of the perfection of wisdom is that, from the perspective of perfect wisdom, even this account of the way things are is ultimately arbitrary.
I don't think we have anything to discuss about that. Anyway, why don't next one read the next paragraph first, I guess.
Since we fail to see things as they really are, impermanent, suffering, and not self, we grasp at them as if they were permanent, as if they could bring us lasting happiness, and if we could possess them as our very own. Thus, the cultivation of calm and insight involves breaking up the seemingly substantial and enduring appearance of things. Things, our very own selves, our minds, are actually nothing but insubstantial, evanescent dharmas. Abhidharma theory and the associated meditation thus provide a way of getting behind the appearance to a world that is quite different from the one ordinarily experienced, a way of easing one's mind, the mind from the way and the pattern of thought it habitually uses to understand the world. So far, so good, but the currents of craving runs deep, and the habitual ways and patterns of thought are subtle and devious. Our minds have a predilection to the formulation of views, ditthi, to the conceptual proliferation, pancha, and to the manufacture of conceptual construct, we call that pa. It is these which we tend to confuse with the way things are and to which we become attached. In other words, we are always in danger of mistaking our own views and opinions for a true understanding of the way things are. This danger, and this is really the significant point, may apply to views and opinions based on the theoretical teachings of Buddhism, the Abhidharma, and the account of the stages of the path. No less to views and opinions derived from all the theoretical system. Perfect wisdom, however, is what sees through the processes of the mind's conceptual construction, and is not tainted by the attachment to any view or opinion. In particular, it is not attached to the views and conceptual constructs of Buddhist theory, unwholesome and wholesome qualities, the levels of meditation or dhyana, the stages of insight, the attainment of the Buddhist path, nirvana itself, the general theory of dharmas. From the perspective of the perfect wisdom, all these are seen for what they ultimately are, empty, shunyata. That is, the conceptual construct of the Buddhist theory are ultimately no less artificial and arbitrary entities than the conceptual construct of the ordinary unawakened mind, which sees really existing person and selves. The mind can grasp at the theory of dharmas and turn it into another conceptual straitjacket. Thus, the large sutra can state that there is no ignorance and no cessation of ignorance, no suffering and no knowledge of suffering, no cause and no abandoning of the cause, no cessation and no realization of cessation, and no path and no development of the path. It is in this sense Sariputra, not a bodhisattva. A great being who practices perfect wisdom is called one devoted to perfect wisdom.
Okay, I think we can just take a little pause here first, and then we can come to how this book at least understands the concept of emptiness in light of, I would say, the Prajaparamita and how it relates to the Nikaya. Any comment first? Please remember, we come to this topic about emptiness, sunyata, and the perfection of wisdom because since the previous chapter was talking about the transcendent Buddha's body, and then we come to this, the perfection of wisdom. If you look at this historical, I mean, at least from the study the Buddhist literature as looking through the scope or the lens of chronologically, and Prajaparamita, I think we usually like to retain the word, especially in scholar study. Prajaparamita means the perfection of wisdom, and it's you could say the earliest Mahayana teachings concept also. I mean, or you could say the earliest Mahayana, one of the Mahayana emphasis on is the concept of the perfection of wisdom, Prajna Paramita. Okay. But I don't think that, but sometimes you do find that in a certain sutra, in the early Mahayana sutra, that not necessarily mention the sunyata, but they always mention the perfection of wisdom. But even though you could also, you could link it to the sunyata. For example, like one of the famous sutra that everybody knows, the Vajrajayataka, Jinganjin, the Diamond Sutra. So you never find a term, the sunyata there. Okay? But then still, in all these Mahayana, or those are have the preference to this perfection of wisdom. So think that Diamond Sutra represent or carries a heavy message of the sunyata. Anyway, any comment or any whatever you read here, any comment or what,
At what stage do you, if you're actually interested in emptiness and these ideas that, for example, the views and conceptual construct in the Buddhist theory and Buddhist practice, at what stage of your path do you actually go into this? Because I feel like As a beginner, you still need some way to get started.
Well, I think that's why I think in the last maybe 15 or 20 years, mostly at least some monks I know and those who used to study in a Buddhist college, they might be very interested to know that because they somehow that's the reason why in the later here there's a passage, right? We did say that, and then there was conjecture, or you could say there was a theory about believing that this Prajaparamita actually it's the concept of Prajaparamita is come up from Mahayana in against or as the refutation to the Abhidhamma rigid system, you know. That's one way of explaining. Especially, it's very common like that. The way, of course, you could say Japan in China. But then, you know, please also understand. Even though we say this from Japan because they have really have a lot of scholarly study there. However, we still also must understand historically that Japan never really go to study. I mean, in recent time, yes. But I mean, we have talked about their system in old day. They never really go to any other country to study except China. So and China also sometimes we definitely don't know, but we somehow think that it's true. Most you could read line by line from some other master in the old days in China. So that I mean, in other words, what I want to say in general means those who study Prajaparamita, they have also one concept. They don't have to think about the path as the way in Abhidhamma layout, you know.
Because why I'm asking this question because a lot of times I see people who claim that don't have to study anything. You don't have to know the theory. You don't have to do this because why? Because in the end you have to get rid of them anyway. So, but for me, that's anti-intellectualism. It seems to lead them nowhere.
No, I mean, let me see.
Because they
well, I mean, I don't know. I couldn't give you this answer because some people, you know, I'm saying this. It doesn't mean I don't want to stand in any side. Since we are discussing the book and we discussing the concept, I will just also give you some other angle too. But not necessarily I will agree with the angle, or not necessarily that I disagree. This is not my point here. For example, I mean, some can argue, for example, like how could you explain that you know, when the Buddha met someone, and definitely even either in any tradition of Buddhism, you have this kind of story, and then they met somebody, and somebody like, you know, after listen to the Buddha say something, and then they we have advanced attainment. They never study Abhidhamma, that's for sure, right? Because you have to imagine, even nowadays, people have the book, have internet, and then you can invite the teacher come over here very easily, just book them a ticket, give them the first class to sit. I'm just joking, you know. And they can fly over here. In those days, you know, you don't travel most of them. I'm talking about like lay people, and even now people are so study extensively in Abhidhamma. You have to compare to the old day. Maybe monk in the monastery, not everybody even know Abhidhamma also, right? Like nowadays, people read this Visuddhimagga, the part of purification. It's very common now. Let me tell you, 30 years, 40 years ago, you finish your Visuddhimagga, wow. But you know, one thing is you have to understand, in order to read Visuddhimagga, you must learn Pali very well. How many monks do the Pali well? How? And even though your Pali you can read, you barely read it, and we don't have the dictionary nowadays, you just type few words and then come up even. You know, you must have the dictionary with you, and you have teachers who tell you. Let's just say that reading, don't say about the theory and understanding the concept. No, it's really not like that. So I mean, then how you explain that during the Buddha's time, definitely the lots of lay people, they don't have that. Then how you explain they reach a certain stage according, you know, but I think I want to say that we don't want to go too extreme. I will always put it, don't go extreme. Maybe my explanation will be say, they are exceptional, they are different. Actually, they also agree that those people must be exceptional too. So, but if I answer this, I would say for the what to call in English for the sake of a kind of safe way to do. Certainly, you must follow the path, the system first, and maybe actually we also agree, in terms of the wisdom, sometimes it doesn't, the wisdom comes to you, not because you follow the path, it's because some conditionality, or I won't say conditionality, it could say conditionality. Anyway, it's just come up too, right? But the Abhidhamma definitely do not take this kind of view, I have to say, yeah. But that's the one angle. But how extreme you want to go to, or don't study at all, I doubt that, because that never be true in the whole Buddhist system. But they can argue that during the Buddha's time, you don't have those texts to study, you just practice this. But now the problem is that do they have these people who are really teaching you through the practice? Because that is also a study, because they have to use what we call oral transmission. They have to use a verbal, telling you how you go through that. When you have questions, and come to tell them again how you should. That is also actually, in some way, depend how you argue about those. But that still looks like there must be at least there's a fundamental system there to support. To support the practices. Okay. Anyway, it's a big subject. When you come to Mahayana, it's always big subject. Yeah. I mean, even Abhidhamma is a big subject already, but Mahayana is a much bigger subject. Yeah. Anyway, according to Theravada, of course, later they say that, like if you base on the Visuddhimagga system, the part of purification, it's believed that only when you are in the what's the stage called one? Anyone? I cannot remember.
Crossing over Tao.
Yeah, it's in Magga or Magga there. It means they after he knows whether this is a path or not a path. Xun Se Zhi in Chinese is Sankara Upekka. I think I forgot the Pali term. Though it's in that stage, it's believed that on that stage that you understand the emptiness. That's according to the Visuddhimagga. So, but please understand if you under. Yeah, the word is mean formation, equanimity, knowledge. Yeah. All right. Any other?
About the question Alan just brought up, that anti-intellectual tendency, I think toward the later part of the chapter, Gethin himself answered precisely that question. Okay. Citing that there's a general misunderstanding that if even the Dharma does not have an intrinsic existence, why don't we just forget about it
at
the beginning? And the answer, he very concisely answered that the point being that the Dharma need to be properly understood, and that comes first. Yeah.
Okay.
I have a small comment. I always find it interesting that I think maybe more prevalent in Mahayana texts that it talks about emptiness and what the state of emptiness is like. So just like, the page 236 states the large sutra, and then it talks about no ignorance, there is no ignorance, there is no cessation of ignorance, and this like kind of almost dualistic viewpoint. And I always find it interesting that they attempt to use words to describe the state of emptiness, which is hard to describe. And I was also wondering whether that in the Theravada tradition, they also have texts that talks about what the state of emptiness is like, because I feel like I see it more often in the Mahayana suttas, especially like, for example, like the Heart Sutra, but I don't remember seeing it in the Theravada Sutra. And when you attempt to use words to describe emptiness, I feel like it falls short of truly what emptiness is. So, not sure why they always would attempt to use words to describe what it is versus just telling you the path of how to get there. and all of the benefits of once you're there?
Well, the answer to the first question, actually, in Theravada, or you could say the Pali text. In the Pali text, you do have this concept of shunyata, or that means the shunyata, so the emptiness. One of the famous is the small shunyata sutta and the big shunyata sutta, and some other sutta also mention when you see the reality of the five aggregates, it's nothing. That is also emptiness. It does mention there too. But the only difference is you could put it in this way. In the Pali, they don't have this like a repetition of the emptiness, the stage of the emptiness that much, right? It's only mentioned how someone can perceive the emptiness. But please understand, even the early Buddhist texts, like Pali texts, have those things. Actually, you do see the emptiness concept in the early Buddhism, like in Pali, particularly presented by the Abhidhammikas. The Abhidhammikas, even the concept of emptiness by Abhidhammika in the Theravada and in the Sarvastivada are very different also. I don't want to draw in that topic, but I can tell you it's very different. But then I guess if that's very different, sometimes if you look at the Prajaparamita, the literature, you do find the Prajaparamita literature, the wisdom, professional wisdom, to my understanding, actually the concept itself, the content itself, the concept, maybe the language is different, but looks like the content or the concept are very similar to the Pali way of putting the emptiness. Then the Sarvastivada, okay? But there is, for the scholarly study, some believe that the emptiness concepts prescribed in the Prajaparamita, it's against the Abhidhamma. Now, here, not Abhidhamma, it's Abhidharma. It's referred to like Sarvastivada, understand the emptiness. Because, to Sarvastivada, understand the emptiness, in the sense, the sunyata, the word, it's because it's emptiness, so that's why it's dukkha. And that not necessarily always carry the meaning as in the Mahayana understanding of the emptiness. But in the Theravada, or so-called Pali, it doesn't take that emptiness. Might be very slim. I forgot. Once I read only one, maybe little passage. But most of the time, it's always understand the emptiness as the one of the profound reality, not as like the mirror that reflects the dukkha. Actually, because that's what the Abhidharma in the Sarvastivada school try to emphasize. And also the second thing you were talking about, yes, my understanding is that when they say there's no this and no that, I know this is very common. Even you read the Weimo Jijin and all these so-called Mahayana Sutras always come about. When we study Sanskrit, it's always very common that they have no this, no this, no this, and almost using a negation way. So, but this kind of style, just for the sake of the language, you could say this, what do you call the language culture. Some understand the language culture in the earlier time, but they don't have this kind of language culture. Because why we want to say this, because if you look at the literature in the Pali, you do have this like in Udana or Itivuttaka, and that's what's supposed to be maybe not necessarily, how to say, let me say, you could say a little later than the Nikaya, in the Pali Nikaya. And those literatures, sometimes they also mention about like Nibbana. What is Nibbana? Nibbana is no arising and no death, right? Nibbana is a state that no arising and no ceasing, and no born and so forth, no. And that kind of language maybe comes along. And I guess, like you say, but of course, that's usually, I cannot remember exactly now, but when we study emptiness concept in Mahayana, so there were 5 things that we definitely need to avoid. For example, like one thing I remember right now, you don't think the emptiness as a space, like empty space, like that and so forth, okay? However, the negation is a way to ask people not to grasp the concept of the certain thing as that it is, So like that. I guess this book later on does have another way to put very similar messages what I just mentioned. Okay. Did I answer your question? I won't say answer. Did I?
Yes.
At least get something. I don't mean to answer the question. I mean, yeah, right. Okay. If no any comment and questions, since today we have less people here, and anyway we can go along and read the next paragraph now. The teaching of emptiness should not be read. Okay, right. Next one.
The teaching of emptiness should not be read, as it sometimes appears to be, as an attempt to subvert the Abhidharma theory of Dharma as a whole. After all, it appears to the
Applies.
After all, it applies to the constructs of all Buddhist theory, including the Mahayana and crucially itself. There are no bodhisattva and no stages of bodhisattva paths. 2 points are of importance here. First, we are concerned here with the perfection of wisdom, how the world is seen by the awakened mind. Secondly, the perfectional wisdom text presents what they have to say about wisdom, not as an innovation, but as a restatement of the original teaching of the Buddha. Continue?
Yeah, you can continue.
The wisdom or understanding of ordinary beings becomes tainted by attachment to views and conceptual construction. These attachments manifest as a certain rigidity and inflexibility of mind. The perfect wisdom of a Buddha is free of all attachment and clinging. In craving up reality into dharmas, in the manner of the Abhidharma, we are essentially constructing a theoretical model or map for the way things are. Like any model or map, it may be useful and indeed help us to understand the way things are. In a provincial and conventional way, it may actually correspond to the way things are. Some maps and models will reflect the way things are better than others, but they nevertheless remain models and maps. As such, none should be mistaken for the way things are. Thus, for the perfection of wisdom, just as person and beings are ultimately elusive entities, so too are all dharmas. In fact, the idea of anything exists of end in itself is simply a trick that our minds and language play on us.
Yeah, please, next one.
The great thing of perfection of wisdom thus becomes emptiness, sunyata, the emptiness of all things that we might be tempted to think truly and ultimately exist and in themselves. To see any dharma as existing in itself is to grasp at it, to try to hold on to it. But dharmas are like dreams, magical illusions, echoes, reflected images, mirages, space, like the moon reflected in water, a fairy castle, a shadow, or a magical creation, like the stars, dewdrops, a bubble, a flash of lightning, or a cloud. They are here, or they are there, but they are not there. And if we reach out for them, we find nothing to hold on to. Some of these
Similes, yeah.
Some of these similes and images are older than the perfection of wisdom, and in referring and adding to them, like literature, is not so much suggesting that the theory of dharmas is wrong as that it must be understood correctly. The term emptiness is not new to the perfection of wisdom literature. It is already employed. a bit somewhat loosely and only occasionally in the Nikaya Agamas and the canonical Abhidharma text to characterize the experience of meditation and the five aggregates and dharmas, but the emphasis on perfect wisdom as that which understand emptiness becomes the hallmark of perfection of wisdom literature and its philosophical explication by Nagarjuna.
Okay, all right. So, any comment, questions, anything? I mean, at least, I find one thing that people, when you read this, now you're getting familiar with the terminology also of Buddhism, like Abhidharma, Shunyata, Nikayas, Agamas. Now it's not like in earlier time, you don't know what are they. Now you have more sense. And also, so far, I guess, when you read up to now, and then at least you kind of like knowing the relation between the Agamas or Nikaya, and the Sunyata. It's not like not like in the earlier time that the myth what is Sunyata, where does it come from? Or is that the term, or is that the only one like that? So those are very important actually. Yeah. Any other comment? No, nothing. No. Yeah.
我看到那个moon reflected in water， 想到那个镜中花，水中月。
Yeah, it's that also it's the all this. I think actually the reflection from the moon you do find in the Nikaya as well. Any other? No, we can continue now. We suppose we might can finish Mahayana today. I don't think so. Anyway, okay, let's look at the next one. Now we understand the Prajaparamita as a literature, the emphasis on the emptiness, what we call Prajna Paramita. And then you have this literature like 80,000 verses and so forth. And then now the most famous that represent is the literature, you could say the Vajrajayataka, the Diamond Sutra, and the Heart Sutra, the Prajaparamita Sutra, okay? And no, Hirtaya, the Hirtaya Sutra. Now, and then now we come to actually here, like you say, it's been explication by the Nagarjuna. So during about 2nd to the 3rd century, and then that we have one of the person called the Nagarjuna. Usually in Chinese, like to call him as a Bodhisattva Nagarjuna. So, and he actually established the school that's called Madhyamika, okay? Which means the Madhyamaka, okay? So the middle school, okay?
Nagarjuna, who probably lived in the 2nd century CE, is the father of the Madhyamaka, or middle school of Buddhist philosophy. The Madhyamaka was to become one of the 2 great philosophical traditions of the Mahayana. But lest there be confusion, let me remind the reader that a philosophical school of thought is quite a distinct matter from a division and grouping of the monastic Sangha. In India, the Madhyamaka was not and never becomes a school in the sense of the Mahasamkhika, Theravada, Sarvastivada, or Samathiya. In fact, as a Buddhist monk, Nagarjuna was presumably ordained into one of these 4 main ordination lineages, though which is not known, and remained in that tradition for the rest of his monastic life. The Madhyamaka was a philosophical outlook that, like the Mahayana in general, would have crossed the boundaries of the various ordination lineages of the Sangha.
Okay, now we come to the, I guess, because why the Rupert was mentioned about this, Because I think that usually people think that as when you study Madhyamika means as a school, mean you are completely you are completely separate from the other. So, but it wasn't. I mean, even though we were not like here to say we just presumably, but we don't know yet. I mean, because there's no any evidence. I mean, like a direct evidence. But however, but you do know that in India in earlier time there are lots of other masters, other like that way, you know. So, okay. All right, so come to next one. The philosophy school is named after Nagarjuna, principal word.
This philosophical school is named after Nagarjuna's principal work, Mala Madhyamaka.
Not Mala.
Mula Madhyamaka Karika, or
No, Karika.
Karika. Root versus on the middle, and refers to the way in which Nagarjuna presents emptiness. Juna presents emptiness as equivalent to that fundamental teaching of the Buddha, dependent arising, and as such as articulating the middle between the extremes of internalism and annihilationism. If something arises in independence upon some other things, as a Dharma is supposed to, then how? Nagarjuna asks, can it be defined in the manner that certain Abhidharma theorists want, as that which exists of and in itself, as that which possesses its own existence? For if something is sufficient to explain its own existence, then it must exist as itself for ever and ever, and could never be affected by anything else, since as soon as it was affected, it would cease to be itself. And if things cannot truly change, then the whole of Buddhism is undermined. For Buddhism claims that suffering arises because of causes and conditions, and that by gradually eliminating unwholesome conditions and cultivating wholesome conditions, we can change from being awakened to being awakened. Thus, the one who claims that dharmas ultimately exist in themselves must either fall into the trap of internalism by denying the possibility of real change, or, if he nevertheless insists that change is possible, fall into the trap of annihilationism, since, in changing, what exists has gone out of existence. Therefore, concludes Nagarjuna, the teaching of the Buddha is that everything is empty of its own inherent existence.
Okay, now why don't we just go next paragraph first?
But Nagarjuna was quick to point out that we should not conclude that emptiness is equivalent to the view that nothing exists. In fact, those who see the emptiness some kind of annihilationism have a faulty view of emptiness. And when it is wrongly seen, emptiness destroys the Tao with it, like a snake that is wrongly grabs on a word magical spell that is wrongly cast. It is not that nothing exists, but that nothing exists as an individual essence possessed of its own inherent existence. In particular, to see emptiness as undermining the teaching of the Buddha is to fail to take proper account of the basic Abhidharma distinction between conventional truth and ultimate truth. The point is that, for Nagarjuna, the Abhidharma account of the world in terms of dharmas cannot be ultimate description of ways things are. Rather, it still falls within the compass of conventional truth. The ultimate truth about the way things are is emptiness. But conventional truth is still truth, not conventional falsehood. and without it, the Buddha's teaching is hopeless. The Buddha's teaching of Dharma depends equally on two truths: ordinary, conventional truths, and truths from the point of view of the ultimate. Those who do not perceive the difference between these two truths do not perceive the deep reality, tattva, in the teaching of the Buddhas. Without resorting to ordinary conventions, what is ultimate cannot be taught. Without resource to what is ultimate, nirvana is not attained.
All right. Why don't we just read two more paragraphs first? But nirvana is not some absolute reality.
But nirvana is not some absolute reality existing beyond the nominal conditioned world. Behind the veil of conventional truth, or again, this world commit us to eternalism. Emptiness is the ultimate truth of reality and of nirvana. It too is empty of its own existence. It is not an existent. It follows that nirvana cannot be understood as something, some existent, which is other than the conditioned round of existence, samsara. There is nothing that distinguishes samsara from nirvana. There's nothing that distinguishes nirvana from samsara. And the furthest limit of nirvana is also the first limit of samsara. Not even the subtlest difference between the two is found. In emptiness, then, Nagarjuna attempts to articulate very precisely what he sees as the Buddha's teaching of dependent arising, and the middle between the annihilationism and eternalism. Emptiness is not a nothing, it is not nihilism, but equally it is not a something. It is not some absolute reality, it is the absolute truth about the way things are, but it's not the absolute. For to think of emptiness in terms of either an absolute or a nothingness is precisely to turn emptiness into a view of either eternalism or of annihilationism. But in fact, the Buddha taught Dharma for the abandoning of all views, and emptiness is precisely the letting go of all views, while those of whom emptiness is a view are incurable.
All right, why don't we just read under the Tibetan two schools and that had the philosophy on the emptiness.
Tibetan tradition has identified two basic schools of thought in the history of Madhyamaka in India after Nagarjuna. The first is Prasamkita, or method of consequences, exemplified by Buddhapalita, Buddhapalaka, 6th century, and
Chandra Kirti.
Okay, this involves drawing out the undesirable and contradictory consequences that follow from attempting to take up a philosophical position on one issue.
On some issue.
The classic form of this method amounts to a kind of of four possibilities.
Chatuskoti.
That something is the case, is not the case. Both is and is not the case. Neither is nor is not the case. All four are shown to be untenable, and the emptiness follows directly from this. Thus, for example, chapter 12 of Nagarjuna's
Mula
Madhyamaka Karika try to demonstrate the incoherence of maintaining that suffering is produced by oneself, that it is produced by another, that it is produced by both oneself and another, that it is produced by neither. The method is thus primarily negative. There have been no attempt to adduce independent positive arguments aimed at establishing the philosophical position of emptiness. The alternative Svatantrika method is associated with the name of Bhava
Viveka.
6th century.
Okay, right. I think this is it might be a very heavy subject at the moment, unless you really study this philosophy for a long time. But anyway, so now we come to this the Nagarjuna and the middle school that we call Madhyamaka. Okay. Usually you call the person who are upholding the teachings called Madhyamika, but not necessarily. Sometimes then the term been loosely used. But in the earlier time, Madhyamaka refer to school, Madhyamika refer to persons who are upholding the middle path concept. And certainly when Nagarjuna have come up this idea, what he understands as the best way to understand what is meant by conventional truth and the ultimate truth. Of course, he does not agree with, in certain way, he does not agree with what the Abhidhamma way is understand what's meant by the ultimate truth, because and he does find there's a lot of loophole there. I don't want to discuss the detail at the moment, but however, it's for sure he think that he did find out a better solution. So, and that solution has to understand the concept of the interdependent origination, the 缘起, dependent origination. So that's the reason why if you read that he's, you could say he's what you call the main text mean Mula Madhyamika Karika. So it's very clear. At first he would honor to the Buddha and then saying the Buddha would teach dependent origination. So that's beside the concept. Also another very important concept in Madhyamaka is about, it's always applied. There's a kind of argument in with what we call Chatuskoti, 四句. So it's not this, it's not that, it's neither.
It's not both.
It's not neither. So that's called Chatuskoti. It's a very, you could say at the time in India, because not the religious, you could say the Buddhist teaching is not just be understood as a kind of practice, but it is also a kind of way that how you explain to people what is actually the essence of the Dharma, and also what the essence of Dharma. Then of course the ultimate essence of the Dharma, the most powerful, the most important definitely is the Nirvana, right? So, and how do you explain that? So that's why actually Nagarjuna, when he come up this kind of idea, it's almost like a really suddenly the philosophy, you could say the Buddhist teachings, from a mechanical system into a much more like open space discussion, and that's why it really have inspired a lot of young, so-called young monk in those days. And I don't necessarily say young, but you know, it's that really inspire a lot of these monks who are very educated in the Buddhist teachings too, that to think actually the Dharma in what they believe later even emphasis as that actually that's what the Buddha trying to say. But yeah, anyway. Okay, any other comment and question and so forth?
Can you explain the term Swabhava?
No, it's very hard. I did explain last time. Maybe you can read my English on. Because the problem is the word Swabhava. You could look at the word Swa and power. Power, it's always mean existence, right? Existence. So swa is always referred to the existence by itself. You know. Swa, but in Chinese you can translate. Actually, they did have this translation in very old time, but nowadays we usually translate as 自性. Okay. So the swa is by itself. You know, the by itself it exists. So the problem is certainly if people who study the Abhidhamma, Sarvasti Abhidhamma, in Pali Abhidhamma, this term is ignored. That's why some people conjecture that Pali Abhidhamma actually, when the Pali Abhidhamma was arise, they might have learned some experience from the Sarvastivada school already. They know what kind of term has to be. Do not talk about it because it's so controversial and problematic, I would say. But in the Sarvastivada, the Swabhava understand as everything, the Dhamma must have the essence there. For example, the earth must have the earth essence. The water have the water essence. And the fire must have the fire essence. Now the problem is that it looks like this is what, in general understanding, when you say the earth, what is the swabhava of the earth? Yes, the earth has the characteristic like heaviness and so forth. But the earth have those kind of essence. Like concrete is the earth essence. Like for example, how you distinguish that you feel something as the earth, not the water. Because the earth have the extension, have the hardness or kind of concrete kind of feeling, right? But when you feel something like really smooth, not smooth, like slime, like or flow, but you don't say that's earth. You always understand that as the water, right? So that's the reason why then they think the earth itself have this essence, kind of like how you define the essence. Of course, is very hard, but you know there's certain thing is different from the other. Okay. Now the thing it is. To the Nagarjuna, this certainly you cannot be understood as the ultimate truth. But this is the way in Theravada usually, or the Abhidhamma usually understand that, because you could feel that. You do not use a conventional understanding of earth as, look at the soil is earth. And you kind of like have transcend your senses, in relation to that, what you feel. Like, this is not the body. We just only see there's hardness as earth. Or there's something kind of like earth, but it's not wind, right? So in deeper sense, this is what we call swabhava. But the problem is if that was something that unchanging, this is why the Nagarjuna is trying to challenge. Does it represent the dependent origination? And if that really dependent, if that is really, it's mean by that, but that you are going to say that if something is not going to change in such a way, then you believe there's something permanent. Mm-hmm. Because there's some nature that never move. Mm-hmm. All right. Now, but of course, this is one thing, but actually, still, this is not a big problem in the Sarvastivada, because the Sarvastivada also accept one other thing. Yes, we understand the earth element have this essence, however, but when you reach to a higher stage, you also understand these four elements are going to be, decay too. Mm-hmm. Like, going to be decay. And then that's what the Buddha teaching is about. And that even though you say there's four elements, but later all the four elements are actually still is mirage or illusion. Okay. Mm-hmm. Now, but the problem is, they still cannot explain. But why then you believe that there was essence there, mm-hmm. right? But then now you say that okay, they go to decay. But why from the beginning you say that there's an essence? That's why if you really learn a lot of Abhidhamma, especially Sarvastivada Abhidhamma, and you also sometimes can read that and you find in the later Sarvastivada Abhidhamma, actually they still want to debate their position, But whatever, okay, that's mean by essence, by that. But to Nagarjuna, the essence itself has to be not as the way that conceptually constructed. Okay. So when you read some other text, I forgot whether it's a Buddha Bharata or I'm sure it's in what they call, I forgot because I mixed up all this. I didn't read it for a long time. But sometimes actually they did discuss about this. They say, then do you think this is a conceptual, the essence, the swapower? This is sometimes we translate that just like essence also. Whether this is actually is a conceptual. But then the Sarvastiva school will never say, no, this cannot be conceptual. Okay. If you say that that's a conceptual constructor, certainly the Madhyamaka school will accept it. So, but they no. Okay. Yes.
中文啊。
Yeah.
那听师父这样讲话，好像是在分析这个四大嘛。
简单说就是什么叫做这个自信的意思？简单说就是它本来有每一个东西，每一个法，它有本来的特有性、特有的个性。
刚才师父举例的那个，
就是 four elements, yes.
对，那好像就地的它特性嘛，对不对
Yeah, that's excellent. Yeah.
那如果说，那现在是怎么样？是中观他们不认为有自信吗？还是怎么样
No, do not think that the essence, the swapower, is the permanent.
那他们修不修四大分别呢？
Yes, they might. I don't know. They might. This is another question. It's not about whether they practice or not. Now, according to conceptually, because it's very important when you study Buddhism, especially not in the sutta, but later. Definitely, you need to always distinguish what I see. For example, I say, you are David, right? It's as a conventional language. 就是我们叫世俗地的语言 It's a 世俗地 you. But the five aggregates, or say 五蕴 is David. According to the Abhidhamma, that means is the ultimate truth. 就是圣义地 OK
我知道你意思了
But when Nagarjuna is going to talk about 缘起 dependent arising, the dependent arising is always represent one of the topmost concept in Buddhist concept, at least to Nagarjuna. So the topmost, not only Nagarjuna, but any, yeah, the topmost principle there. So if you apply that principle, then now you first have to distinguish what is the ultimate sense. What is ultimate truth? 什么是真实地？什么是正义地？圣义地？ That's what he's thinking. He's not thinking that you cannot tell me the five grades is a Sanyidi, because it's very clear even in Nikaya. The five grades is not Sanyidi, because even though Abhidhamma will put it that way, but when you are really look at all the Buddha Sutta, and the Buddha will say the five grades is all mirage or gone, then the concept of Sanyidi, you could also argue that, you could also understand in a certain way first, from one perspective is, actually is how you define Sanyidi. Okay, how you define the so-called ultimate truth. Okay, yeah. Understand? So five aggregates cannot be ultimate truth. To them, the emptiness is the ultimate truth. And then now, what is emptiness? Is now you take this Swabhava as one of the example. And if you believe there was essence there, so the essence means they're permanent. How can the permanence, from a Buddhist perspective, of Buddha's perspective, can be the ultimate truth?
Rupert.
Huh?
Rupert. 色举.
Yeah, that also been discussed also. Kalapa, the surgery, the Kalapa concept is being discussed. So, and to the Madhyamita school as well as even to this, what to call that, the Vinyapta school, the Weishi. I mean, they are not denying there's the existence of the surgery or the Kalapa, but they don't think the Kalapa as the ultimate truth. Understand?
那社具是不是最小的一个单位，不能够再分解的一个单位？
Yeah, if you think that there was one unit that you cannot be indestructible, so then you are fall into a nihilism. And you know the Buddhism would do not agree that the real Dharma is the nature of the so-called eternalism and nihilism. No. Okay, anyway, I know it's a big topic. That's why all the Tibetan school and other school spend 10 years, 20 years, even though sometimes I don't think you need that long time. I don't know, this is not my question, but generally, like in the Gallup school, what they studied is, they have to study a lot of this and that. Like one of my close friend, actually, he's a British guy. Take from 6 years to study Prajaparamita only. After 6 years, only then they start to learn Madhyamika. They don't start to learn Madhyamika first. 6 years, I don't know why. But that's another thing. But yeah.
那我想一个简单的问题哦，就是说这各种说法里面，哪一个说法对于禅修最 make sense？ Easy answer.
No, I cannot answer you this question, but I maybe I want to put it this way. Because we are reading the Mahayana now, right? We cannot bias. Say, oh, you are what. This is bias. You have to see how they think. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you are Chinese eating Chinese food, I say, oh, Chinese food is most awful because why they have use chopstick, for example. I cannot argue that why you want to use chopstick, why don't you use fork and knife? But I must, from your angle, to talk about it. So from the Mahayana understanding, my understanding is that they are talking actually much more important thing. They think. Okay, whether you agree or not is another question. We have to stand in the point since we are talking Mahayana. They think they talk very important thing is that those Abhidharma, they cannot solve the problem. And of course, you can argue it maybe in a further argument, if we cannot solve the problem, there's no way you can reach the most profound enlightenment also. That's what they understand. Okay. I mean, this is why you study. Question, You might be not you just know understand what they think. Okay. Yes. Okay. Okay. Any other try not to asking because we are not spending the time to learn Mahayana now, and then I can give you a lot of sources and read in the future time if you want to do that. But please, no, I think 6 years is really too long. But I mean, I'm not going to judge other people's study. But anyway, we come back to page 238. I want to say that actually the interesting thing later on in the Tibetan school, not because of in the preference, some prefer the Buddha Bhadita's idea, and then and some prefer what his other name I think is the one Chandrakirti. I think he's go with the Buddha Bhadita. Where is it? I think he did mention here. Anyway, I cannot remember exactly, but I just want to say, so you must understand that in later Tibetan they will come to that very important school like Gelug school, Huanjiao, right? Was saying that they are the Prasangika, they are not the Swadantika. Okay, understand? 就秩序派跟他应成派跟秩序派 yeah, Shwa power, yeah. What is it the term? Yeah, Prasangika and Swadantika, yeah. So. So yes, and then they follow the Bhava Viveka. All right. Any other? But if you read, if you once I tried, there was not only one. A few times I was when I was in Scotland. That time actually the Gallup School Dalai Lama went there to give 3 days, so-called a talk. And the first day, but I was actually there. I was honored actually being invited to give some talk also for lay people before Dalai Lama arrived. So there was you have to imagine he went to Scotland, and the full of the people there. So, and then afterwards, so when I will listen to his class, and he was actually based on the talk about the 7 stages of what you call the 7 stages of meditation, something like that. But they have one of the wrong passage about the dependent origination. But a lot of people, the third day, the last day, when he given the talk about the differences between the Prasangika and Swatantrika, and of course, as a Gallup school, they have their own position and arguing why their understanding of Madhyamika is better than the other school. So a lot of people get, what are they talking? Because firstly, before you really understand, my understanding is one of the people make a lot of mistake. If you want to really study well in the Madhyamika school, you certainly have to study well dependent origination. Otherwise, so I guess that's why that time he gave the talk, he have a very good approach as well. He talked about the dependent origination. From there, then he started to talk Madhyamika. Yeah.
I think there was a saying in Chinese, 谈那个性空，如果不谈缘起的话，是恶取空。
是啊，是啊，All right. Okay. Okay. If no question, no comment, or it's too much to think about it. Now, why don't we just go on? See the Madhyamika actually. Now, this is the next paragraph is quite important. I give you a hint. This is also, I agree with him also. That actually, what the Madhyamika try to solve, I don't mean he say that way, but let me just put it aside, is about drishti, the jian. It's about the huo, the jian, huo. It's about the confusion and the jian, rather than the klesha, the fanao. Okay. It's not their main concern. Okay. All right. Who is the next one to read? Oh, you. Okay. The term view, drishti. Why don't we take a little break first? Okay. Thank you for the online. And then we have the 10 minutes break. I can have some chocolate maybe, or drink. And I'll see you in 10 minutes. Thank you.